Hey everyone, and welcome to another Heroes and Bosses painting video. This time I'm doing a speed paint and using Quickshade to get these orcs on the tabletop ASAP. I started off by priming the orcs with Corax White from Games Workshop and then using a flesh tone to paint the inside of the mouth. This time I'm using Khardic Flesh from P3. For orcs with a closed mouth, I'm painting all around the teeth with the flesh tone. Next I chose 5 greens to use for the orc skin. If you've seen my other speed paint videos, then you're as good or even better than me by now using Quickshade. However, you never know what a color is going to look like after Quickshade until you've tested it. So part of this paint video is to show you what some new colors look like under the Quickshade, and then to decide which ones are best for orc skin. The color you see being applied right now is Ogryn Camo from Games Workshop, and the other colors will be Elysian Green, also from Games Workshop, Army Green and Moldy Clothes from Army Painter, and Battle Dress Green from P3. I'm going back to the flesh tone for all the deep cuts and wounds on the orcs. Here you can see this guy has muscle and bone showing, so the muscle is going to get the flesh tone. Now everyone's method of speed painting is a bit different. Some people will paint an entire set of minis the exact same colors. If you're using an airbrush, that would make sense, but if you're using a paintbrush and a wet palette, it really takes no extra time to put a few extra colors on there. So here are the orcs with their mouths and their skin painted, and here is a picture of each orc behind its respective color. Next I'm painting the teeth for all the orcs using Vallejo's Ivory. You could use a full white color. The Quickshade is going to darken them down quite a bit. In fact, all the colors are going to darken significantly, so I tend to choose bright, cartoony looking colors. I'm also using Ivory to start the eyes. This likely isn't necessary, but I wanted to make sure they were as bright as possible before I added color to them. After the white is dried, and then adding some Wild Rider Red, and then using the green skin tones to touch up the spots where the eyes were messy or too big. For all the exposed bones, like on this guy's right leg, I'm using some Screaming Skull, though you could use Ivory here as well if you wanted to. So here's how they're looking so far, and right now you might be wondering, how do you get that amazing, seamless panning shot? I used a high-tech empty paint can and rolled it across the table with my cell phone on top. So now I'm just continuing with the Screaming Skull and using it to paint the bone armor that some of these guys are wearing. So another pretty obvious tip for getting your minis painted quickly is to not mix any paint colors. However, I am going to do it just this once for the armor. I'm mixing a bit of black into some pig iron to make a really dark metallic, and this is so that I can highlight the rivets and actually have them stand out after the Quickshade. For the majority of the armor, I'll be using this dark metallic color, but in a few random places, I'll be using Blighted Gold from P3. Last, I'm going to use Stormhost Silver on all the rivets and rings on the armor. Here's a front and back view of the orcs so far. The next thing to paint is the clothing, and I've tried to pick colors that contrast well with each skin color so they don't blend together after the Quickshade. Here I've put each color that I plan on using for each orc in front of it. Some of the orcs have multiple pieces of fabric that they're wearing, and one has a belt. I'll come back to these later. Right now I'm adding one color to each orc. If you were masochistic and painting your entire set of orcs at once, you could mix and match skin tones and colors so that each of your orcs is completely unique. Next I'm going to pick a few drab colors to use to paint the foot wraps and the straps that are holding on the bits of armor. Using the same strategy as before, I'm just picking colors that stand out well against the other colors that are around them. Some of the orcs have shards of wood sticking out of them for some reason. For all these bits of wood, I'm going to be using Balor Brown. For that one sculpt that has a rope belt, I'm using some of the Khorne Red that's still on my palette. And that is the end of the base colors. Next I'm going to create a textured base, just like I did with the dwarves and the goblins for Massive Darkness. First I'm going to randomly spread around some Stirland Mud onto each of the bases. I'm giving the bases plenty of time to dry before I completely cover them with Dryad Bark. Next I'm giving the bases 2 layers of dry brush. The first one is going to be Steel Legion Drab. The second, lighter dry brush is going to be done with Tallarn Sand. And finally, I'm painting all around the rim of each base using a dark grey. This is a mix of Elysian Grey and black. Now the minis are ready for the Quickshade. I'm going to be using Army Painter Strong Tone Quickshade. The first thing to do is to take one of the miniatures, dunk it in halfway, and then put the lid loosely back on the Quickshade. This stuff thickens extremely fast when exposed to air. Next, use a brush that you hate to completely cover the miniature and the base, including all around the rim. The worst thing you can have happen is to have one spot that doesn't get hit by the Quickshade. You only get about 5 or 6 minutes before the Quickshade turns into a sticky tar. After that, you're going to be leaving permanent brush strokes on the miniature, so after the miniature is covered, start at the top and brush downward to wipe off the excess. Once you get the really heavy pools off, you can then use the tip of your brush to dab off areas that still have a little too much. This part is a bit of a balancing act. You don't want to lose your shadows, but you also don't want to drown out your details. You definitely want to clear most of the Quickshade from the eyes and the mouth, however. Once you feel like the miniature is done, set it down and get your second mini. Repeat the same steps with the second miniature and then set it down. Then go back to your first mini and make sure you don't have any new large pools of Quickshade that have formed. Repeat that for the rest of your minis and you should be golden. Do your best not to touch these guys for 24 hours. Pick your favorite matte varnish. I'll be using Tester's Dull Coat and completely cover your miniatures. So here's the finished product. I'll be adding a bit of blood to some of these later, but I wanted you to see them as is. A special thank you to all my patrons for supporting these videos and motivating me to make these videos at a faster pace. If you want to be part of the community and help decide which miniatures get painted next and share some of the things that you've been working on, check us out on Patreon. I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you very much for watching.